Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Let me share my screen and let's get started. So, again, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Dev2Dev series. Gert and I will tell you today something about SAP BTP governance. So before we start, just let's go over some general arrangements. First of all, everybody is muted or should be muted at least, but you can chat with us. For example, if you have questions, please, you can put them in the chat in English, and then after, at the end, we can answer or try to answer your questions. And also, this session will be recorded, so you can always review it later on our YouTube channel. With that being said, let's start with this session. One moment, I forgot one small thing. Just for my sake. Okay, let's go. Okay, so BTP governance. Why are we having this session at all? Well, too often we see BTP being implemented on the go. What do I mean with on the go? We are doing a project, and in one phase of the project, we need one or two services included on the BTP platform. They are being activated, and basically that's it. Suddenly they have BTP. Well, I think everyone can agree that's not the best way to go. So when BTP is being activated, attention should be paid on several pillars. First of all, security. On security, we have already done a session, a Dev2Dev session. You can always review this on our Flexo YouTube channel. But not only security, think about dev guidelines, release management, monitoring, and also naming conventions. Now, of course, we cannot tackle all of these topics today. Today, we will be focusing on release management and monitoring specific. So let's see how we can run BTP at its best on these two topics. But because BTP is so big and has so many options, in our explanation and also in our demos, we will focus on two main parts. So release management will be focusing on transporting Fiori applications and CPI content. And also for BTP monitoring, we will be seeing ALM in combination with CPI. And also we have a very brief mentioning of Kibana to fill up some gaps with ALM. Okay. So that being said, let's start with release management, and Gert will explain all about it. Gert?
Okay, thank you, Peter. Okay, let's start with release management regarding, let's take the example of a Fiori app, but this could, of course, also be, for example, the Node.js app. And this is the same flow that we will be using. You can see it here on the screen. And we will be focusing on the best practices provided by BTP, so the services that they enabled for us. Of course, it is possible to use other services, but for this demo and for this session, we will focus on the SAP Business Application Studio, or HIT, the SAP Continuous Integration and Delivery Service, and then in a later step, we will do the SAP Cloud Transport Management Service. Okay, let's start with the developer itself. So we have our Fiori app. We created it. It runs locally. So now it's time to actually start with the continuous integration part, which means that we will integrate it with the Git system. And there we can then collaborate with other developers. So we can push and merge all of our codes. And then in the end, when locally everything has been tested, everything has been set up, we can then decide to actually do the deployment itself onto the cloud environment. This is where the HIT repository will actually have a trigger to the SAP Continuous Integration and Delivery Service of SAP. There we have a flow setup, a job actually, that will go through different steps that have been configured. We can configure, for example, unit testing. We have some malware scanning, and this is actually where the power of that tool comes in. It also allows you to build the whole application in a unified way. So will be always in the same environment, while when you do it locally, and I do the deployment on my computer, there might be some differences in installations from, for example, Peter local environment. And this is where this tool brings a unified way of deploying it. Once that has been built and tested, so this is then the CD part of the CI/CD flow, We can then decide to actually release it. It's been done automatically in the CI/CD flow, and it releases then the deployment package to the SAP Cloud Transport Management tool, where we can then decide to transport it into different environments, so meaning an acceptance or a production environment. Okay, let's jump into a demo of this. So let me start with where we always start, which means the development tool itself. So I need to refresh my SAP Business Application Studio, but this will actually open the Fiori app that we've already created. I do have to wait a little bit so that the HIT can actually start up. So we can see now that our app has been completely started up. And for testing purposes, we will just change, for example, a little text on the screen. Yep. So let me just remove a little bit of testing things. We've made our change. Our local environment has actually seen, okay, we've made this change. So now we can actually go with the continuous integration part of the app. We have made our change. We can do the commit. So we will provide a message. And we will immediately commit and push this change to our Git repository. Okay, let's now switch to our Git repository. So now I've opened, for this demo purpose, we're using GitHub, but another Git is also possible, for example, GitLab. This depends a little bit on your environment yourself, but for us, for this demo, we will be using GitHub. So in GitHub, we do have our repo here, and we can see that 2 branches have been set up. This is also a best practice from a CI/CD standpoint, that we will always use different branches. We will always protect our main branch so that there's no possibility of doing direct changes on that branch. And in this case, we also have the development branch where we're doing the active developments. We can see that there is a new pull request, which is actually just the commit that we just done. So we'll click on it. We say, okay, this is done. We will do our development into our main branch. We see that everything seems to be okay from a Git standpoint, and we can merge this. So there you go. We've now done the CI part of our CI/CD flow. We've merged everything into the main branch, and now it's actually time to go to the continuous integration and delivery step of our demo. We can see that I now went to the service that SAP offered. We do have in the main screen, we see some separate tabs. We have our credentials where we just put our credentials so that it's secured so that it's just in a secure way stored. We have our repositories, which link back to the Git repository. So this is a little bit of configuration. And then for demo purposes, we do have just one job specifically made for this demo. We can see when we click on it, we get some extra information. And we can already see, for example, on the top, the change we just made. So the trigger made between the HIT and the CI/CD has been executed, and the job has been started. I already have one of the previous builds ready, just for demo purposes, since the builds take about 5-6 minutes, and we will not be waiting for that.
Please no.
Yes, Peter. So we can see here on the right all of the steps that are executed by our CI/CD. Here is actually the power of that tool. So we can see it here, for example, we have a build phase. This is a second phase, except for the initializing. But the build phase will then open up an environment, usually via Docker or something similar, that will open one unified environment that has been configured. So that means that it can, for example, be set to a Node 16 version, for example, so that it always builds in the exact same way. We then have in the third step, for example, additional unit tests that can be added. We didn't do that for this demo, but this is perfectly possible. So whenever a unit test fails, we could say that the CI/CD flow should not continue. This is really good for a security standpoint, and of course is what we want to achieve. We then have some malware scan, for example, to make sure that nothing goes wrong into, especially a production system. And then the acceptance step is where, let's say, a little bit the magic happens. This is where the actual deployment happens. And here you can already say, okay, let's deploy this into the cloud development system. Once this deployment has been done, we can see that there's some additional steps. And the last step is probably the most important one, which is the release step and the post actions, which will then take the build project and send it to the cloud transportation management service from SAP in this case. So now that this demo has been concluded, we will continue with the presentation and go to the next part. So basically, we've seen this flow. We went to the SAP Business Application Studio where we did our app. We made a change. We pushed it to the Git. We made a change. The trigger has been done so that the job picked it up in the SAP Continuous Integration and Delivery service. And now for this session, we will continue with the SAP Cloud Transport Management tool. So what is it? So further on, we will refer to CTMS, since this is quite a long name. But what is CTMS? It actually allows us to use one unified, integrated, very important, very integrated way to actually deploy our apps into different accounts and different environments in the exact same way. It is a completely integrated tool from SAP. So that means that it works with Node.js apps. We saw that it works with Fiori apps, but it will also work with, for example, CPI apps. And of course, as we done with the demo, it does complement the CI/CD approach. All right. When we look at the environment, this is what we typically see. So we have our SAP Cloud Platform. We are focusing, of course, on a cloud environment in this session. So we will be not talking about an on-premise system. But we see here that we have our Cloud Foundry environment on our BTP system. We have our transport management service active. And in the transport management service, there's some configuration around the landscape. Certain transport nodes have been set up. So we can see that we have some transport nodes, and they are connected with destinations from BTP to actually link them together with the target environments, which you see on the bottom. And then, thanks to transport routes, we can then say to the CTMS, okay, once this has been deployed in, for example, our transport node T, we know that this is the test account. When it's been deployed there, we can then route it into our production account, which is the transport node B. And here I will pass the presentation back to Peter, which will explain the whole flow and explain the transport management service with the example of CPI.
Yes, I will exactly do that. So release management, but this time oriented to CPI. Main question, why can this be interesting? Well, by default, CPI only offers you an export-import methods and to export and import the flows. The main problem is it's sometimes a struggle to keep your environments aligned. I'm working most of the time in support activities. I see a lot of systems, and I can see that's real struggle to keep all these environments alike, the package versions, flow versions, and so on and so on. So by using this tool and the CTMS tool, it will make your life easier to keep these environments aligned. And it's also very easy because, as we already said, it's an integrated experience, and you will see that during my demo, it's really easy to use. So let's pull up a small overview of what we will show you. So in my demo, we will have three tenants and three cloud tenants. And the one on the top is the one where we have the CTMS activated. And then we have two CPI tenants as well. We have a test and a production. And the idea is that we transport content from test to production. You can also see in the CTMS part at the top, we have nodes. So there we define these nodes, test node and production node. And then we see all of the arrows between these building blocks with the blue labels. Well, these are all destinations. So basically, setting up the tool is creating a lot of these destinations, so he knows what to push to where. And then after a few configuration, it works just fine. It's relatively easy to set up. Okay, so this is what I will show you in real life in a demo. So let's go out of this presentation and jump into our systems. So let's see where we are. I think this should be it. Okay, so this is the landing page of CTMS. And this is just an overview screen, so you can see some graphics about the success rate of the imports. You can see an overview of the top nodes, how many pending transports there are, and so on and so on. We also have two CPI tenants we will be using in this demo. So this is our test environment. Of course, I will need to refresh this because it's web application, and let me do the exact same thing for production. So here we have a test environment, and in this demo, what I will do is I have a test package, CTMS test package, where we have one flow included. And this will be transported to this CPI environment. And as you can see, this package is not existing yet. So, okay. So how does it actually work? Of course, we first need to create a transport package. So here on the top, we have the export button. This is the one you get by default and without using CTMS. But now we will be using the CTMS. And now by activating this service, we have a new button, the transport button. We can either choose this functionality right here. In this case, we will transport the whole package, or you can also choose to select only one specific flow or two specific flows. In that case, you can just click here on the actions and do a transport there. In this case, it won't make any difference because there's only one test flow in the package. So let's take the whole package anyway. So we have to put in a comment. Let's call it demo. It's best to check this box because then he will take your login name as a transport owner. That's a bit better. And let's do the transport. And it seems CPI is not awake yet. So let me do that once more. Perhaps the refresh was not successfully or something. So let's try once again. Okay. Here we go. So in a couple of seconds, we will get the pop-up saying, there it is, the transport package has been created, and we see the ID, it's 359. So, and basically that's all we need to do on this tenant, on this API instance. So now let's go back to our CTMS dashboard and let's refresh this. Okay, you can see pending transport has been gone up from 2 to 3. And now let's go and import this transport in production. There are a number of ways of doing it, but for this demo purpose, I will show you a bit more visual way. So here we have a landscape visualization, because of course this tool can be used to execute a number of transport routes. But this is the one I'm playing with at this very moment. So from test, CPI test to production. So I can select my production node, and here I have a link to go to its import queue. So here we are. And you can, of course, see I have been preparing myself today and yesterday. So we have some previous transport there as well. But this is the one of just a few minutes ago, the 359. So basically, I just need to select this one. I click on import selected. We need to confirm. And then all we need to do is wait. This will take a couple of seconds. In the meanwhile, let's go back to the demo of Gert previously, because we have seen the whole flow. He made a change, he committed it to hit, then we had the CI/CD process. At the end of this process, we also had to push to CTMS, and basically from there on, the demo would have been exactly the same as I'm doing now. So we would have also a request just like this, just select it, click import, and then of course a different route should have been taken to a different system, but basically the concept is completely the same. For example, this would have been the route he would have been taking. So you can see it's same system, but it's different route. So basically, it works the exact same way. Let's see if our import in the meanwhile has already finished. There are a number of ways to go to the same window. For example, here you can see some test nodes we have created, but this is the one we were just working with. And we can see our transport was successful. So let's go to our production tenant and refresh this overview. And as you can see, now we have the new package with our flow included. So That's how simple it is to use this transport service in combination with CPI, but also in combination with CI/CD and
Yeah.
with Fiori apps. Basically, that's all that's to it. Okay, so let's jump back to our presentation. And this actually also concludes the part about the release management. So let's continue with our second topic, monitoring. What we will bring you here is two parts, ALM and Kibana. The main part, however, will be ALM. ALM stands for Application Lifecycle Management, and it's a set of tools which helps you to manage the entire lifecycle of SAP Cloud applications. You can compare it a bit like a solution manager, but then in the cloud. And it's not as complex as solution manager, but a bit of the same principles behind. And it supports a really wide range of SAP Cloud products, and it's a part of the BTP platform. ALM does a lot of things, but not everything yet. And to fill up those small gaps, we have a second tool we very briefly want to show you at the end,
Yeah.
which is called Kibana. But Gert will tell you more about that a bit later on. So ALM. Well, ALM comes in two flavors, two main functionalities, let's say. The first one is ALM for implementation. We are not really interested in this part today, but very briefly said, this part of the tool helps you to implement sub-cloud products. And so it helps you to design, the build, the testing, and the deployment of sub-cloud applications, also in regards to the best practices of SAP. The part, however, in which we are interested in today is ALM for operations. And this is really like a small toolbox which helps you to automate, analyze, correct issues in your system, and also to detect them, basically. So how does this actually work then? Well, this is like a schematic overview of ALM for operations. And on the left side, we see problem detection, because everything starts with detecting a problem. And to do this, we have a number of monitors at our disposal. Again, in my demo, I will focus on CPI. And for example, in CPI, we will be using the integration and exception monitor and also the health monitor. So let's say something goes wrong, an alert will be created, which brings us in the middle part of this slide at the problem routing. So we have an issue, we have an alert. So this alert we can use to do something else, which brings us to the problem resolution. And there we have a number of options. Currently today, the most used option is email. So basically you have an issue, we have an alert, and an email is sent to one or multiple recipients to alert them of this issue, which is also the main power of this tool. You don't have to actively check your system. It will notify you if something goes wrong. That's the main benefit. But also in the near future, functionality will be added instead of sending an email, also to initiate a chat or send an instant message to Teams, for example, and also create tickets. I think it's already available right now, actually, to create tickets in ServiceNow, for example. So this is also one of the options you can choose from. I also often get the question, okay, we have this sub-cloud product. Can we use ALM, yes or no? Well, it's always a bit of a difficult question to answer because it all depends what product, what do you want to monitor, basically. So we have a very good website from ALM, which gives you a very nice overview of what product can support which ALM functionalities. So basically what you can do by going to this website, it's called the export portal. So if you type in Google SAP Cloud, SAP ALM export portal, you will find this site. And there you can see all the monitors. So this is basically all of the monitors we have seen in my previous slide. And there you can click on overview and you can see all the supported products. So basically you select the monitor, then you see all supported products. If the product you want to use in combination with ALM is supported, it will be listed here. You can click even on this link, and then you can see more in detail what exactly is supported and how, basically. So this is a case-by-case evaluation you need to do. Okay, enough talking. Let's go again in the system and show you how it actually looks and works. So let's go to ALM, and if everything goes well, it should be open somewhere. Okay, right here. Again, let's refresh it because it's a web app. Okay, so this is the starting page, the main page of SAP ALM. I'm admin, I see everything. You can also see, for example, here SAP Cloud ALM for implementation, and this is the part I talked to you about, which I'll not be discussing today, but actually this is part we are interested in, which is SAP ALM for operations. And again, you can see all of the monitors we have also seen in the slide. And again, for this demo purposes, we will be checking first of all the integration and exception monitor. So we click and a new window will open. And basically what we see here is if we have connected two CPI tenants, again, the same systems we have used in the previous demo with the transport, but yeah, only the production one is active because we don't like to get a lot of mails of test environments. Mostly that's too much. So the production one, and we can, for example, see that there are no exceptions in our current time frame, which is a good thing basically because this is actually production. And we can, of course, drill down on this dashboard so we can have an overview of everything which went successfully in this case. We can also see like a graphical overview at the top. These are actually filters, so you can actually use this to drill down in a more specific way to put filters. So you can see message IDs. You can, of course, go deeper and see more information. We always have a direct link to the CPI environment if you really want to go even further. In case of errors, most often you need to go further because if everything is okay, you don't need to do that. If there are errors, it will also be shown here, of course. So this is the first layer of the integration and exception monitor, just monitoring all of the messages completed successfully or unsuccessfully. Let's assume something goes wrong, then an alert will be created. So where can we find these alerts? We can find those right here. And here I left some because these ones you need to close manually yourself, but for this demo, I left them open. So you can have a list of all of the alerts. You can, of course, click on the alerts and again, drill down on the specific message and so on and so on. So here you can see the alert. And in the setup we have created that if there is an alert, an email will be sent to a number of people, basically, or a mailbox. It can be whatever you want. And this email looks a bit like this. Let me go to my mailbox. And here we can see an example of such a notification email. So you can see very clearly it's coming from SAP ALM. It gives you some information about which flow is going into error. And we also have a link which brings you directly into this window, and then your search can start. Okay, we have an error, what's going on, and so on and so on. But in the end, you don't have to actively monitor yourself. You can just sit back, relax, do your daily jobs, and you will receive an email when something goes wrong. That's the main benefit here. So this is the first monitor I wanted to show you with CPI. The second one is the health monitor. Why is this important? Well, when doing integrations, very often you have to deal with certificates, and these things have a habit of expiring once in a while, which can be a pain in the because then your integration stops working, right? And you don't want this. So therefore, we have this monitoring tool. Let's go again to our production tenant. And here we can see already a small overview, and we can see some certificates have been expired. So we can click, we see more details, and so forth and so on. We can see the failed ones and the still valid ones. Again, here we also have alerting that in case a certificate is to be expiring in a predefined time frame, again, I will receive an email notifying me the certificate is to expire. Please take appropriate action. So again, this is a very helpful tool. So this is just a small demo of what SAP ALM can do. You can see also other monitors, but this will always depend on which cloud product you want to combine it with. Okay. SAP ALM can do a lot of things. One thing it still cannot do today is, for example, when it comes to monitoring Node.js stuff, so the stuff Gert was talking in the very beginning, but therefore we have a different option, Gert, and I think you have something to tell about that.
Thank you, Peter. So for the monitoring itself of, for example, Node.js apps, there is an option available. Normally, we just have here an example of the BTP cockpit where we opened a service. And you can see here the tab logs. You see that there is some minimal amount of logs available here, a little bit hard to read. But the most important feature that we want to show you is that there's a button for the Kibana dashboard, which is actually integrated and standardly available in the BTP environment already. Once you click on it, we can see that it opens a nice dashboard. And here we have an example of it. You can see how much logs there are and so on and so on. And you can also drill down into the requests and logs to see exactly what maybe went right, but also what went wrong, of course. Okay, that actually concludes this session about our demo and the cloud governance. So let's quickly wrap it up. Usually we saw we started the session with that usually BTP implementations use governance on the go. So usually it happens somewhere in the middle or even in the end. And this is something that we want to avoid. So that's why we do stress that please think about governance at the start, implement it immediately, as specifically release management, as is a very big part of the development process itself. Now, if there are any questions regarding the bigger picture, so meaning not only the governance or but that, but
Specific
also
tools, basically.
yeah, indeed specific tools also about security, for example, please feel free to contact us, to contact Flexo. We do have some standard assessments already available for that. We can see here an example of that. We have the BTP maturity assessment, and we can actually help there with questions and so on and so on. That means that we can now actually go to our Q&A session. But before we can do that, we want to quickly say that there's a Dev2Dev series about S4 extensibility also planned in the future. So more information will come soon. And that actually allows us to go to the Q&A session.
Yes. Are there any questions? Let's see. I think this one is for you, Gert.
Yeah. So the question that has been sent now is, can we use CI/CD from GitHub to do the deployment? So indeed, it is possible to just use not only GitHub, but also other Git repositories to actually do the deployment themselves. However, this requires some additional setup. So you usually have to write your code yourself to do the actual deployment. It's not integrated like the CI/CD service. So we do recommend, if you are using BTP and all of those services together, yeah, then of course we recommend the CI/CD from that.
To keep it in one family, basically.
Indeed. Yeah, I think that's also one for me. Can we actually use Kibana for Fiori application logging? So that means that any UI-based logging can be done. Well, this is actually a tricky question because Fiori applications run on the PC of the user themselves, which means that the logging doesn't happen on a server. So this happens at in the user's PC. So basically, we cannot do it out of the box. However, it is somewhat possible if we send those logs back to our service and then we continue logging them there. So it is a bit of a mixed question. Yes, mixed answer. So the answer is yes, but additional development needs to happen for that.
Next question
For you.
That's something for me. Is ALM included in your BTP license? And the answer is yes. It's one of those few things at SAP who is actually free. Okay, there's a small remark to make that you need to have the support license, but as far as I know, all SAP customers have this support license anyway. So yes, for 99% sure, it should be included with your BTP license. Okay, so here we have to wrap everything up. Thank you very much for attending this session. I hope you found it interesting. You will also receive a recording from this session. So if you want to view it again and to take it all in detail, please do. And as told, if we can help you further on with your BTP strategy, you know where to find us. Thank you very much and see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.